to make some notes, and do not have a pen, I have some pencils up here. So now's a good time to come up here, get those pencils, or ask our helper here or assistant to get a pencil for you if you need one with your recipe sheet. So with that said, while she's handing it out, let me introduce myself. My name is Patricia. I'm a nutritionist. And many may know you from the weekly vegan dinners at Opera Plaza, which are held Wednesdays at 6 p.m. And if you'd like more information after this demonstration, please stop by our table in the courtyard outside, and we have more information, and you can sign up to receive additional menu information and speaker information as it occurs on a weekly basis. So with that said, yes, it's about cake. Why cake? Do we really need more cake in the world? Thank you. You know, that's what I say, yes. And not only yes, resounding, I was frustrated. Even if I wasn't a veggie person, I would be frustrated with the offerings out there, because it's just a dearth of junk food that they're pushing out on us. And it's all the stuff every professional, health professional such as myself will tell you to avoid. Sugar, fats, adulterated oils, just not really going to help you in your health journey. So that's why I really wanted to put forth this overview for a simple vegan cake. This cake is also meant to be almost an intuitive cake as you make your first one out the door. This cake is also meant to assist you perhaps during the holiday time or celebration times with friends and family. You can go over to their house and impress them with, oh yes, it's a vegan cake. And you can make it within these guidelines of being sugar-free, oil-free, and baking powder-free. It's quite impressive, and it's better than anything you can purchase at any of those prefab market stores that want to sell us this stuff at an exorbitant price. So hopefully this will help you. Now, does everyone have a sheet as I carry on? I would like just to begin with an overview here in my first square on the upper left of the sheet. You have an overview of some guidelines. You always want to preheat your oven, and I think ours is preheating back there. We're going to have samples that I prepared on Friday evening to give out ready. And then we're also going to bake not one, but 2 cakes this afternoon. They may or may not be ready to eat as we conclude this demonstration, but I will have bountiful, nice, fresh, warm cake for you to eat at the courtyard if you want to stop by the table afterwards. So with that said, I also, to the right then, there's another box that says ingredient suggestions. I'm not giving you a set recipe per se, because I know personally for myself, I'm not a cook. I'm a nutritionist. I'm just a home cook, though, who prepares food. And, you know, that's what I want to put forth is eating plan or eating approach that you can incorporate the foods that you have in your pantry to satisfy whatever needs or desires that you want. And that's why I'm just giving you some suggestions here. We'll talk about more of that as we go through our cake demonstration. But with that said, I want to start us out actually on what I have numbered cake number 2. Cake number 2 is a gluten-free cake. Now, just a quick note about gluten-free cakes. What is gluten? That's actually the protein in gluten-containing grains. The nature of the protein is such that many people have challenges digesting it. It's difficult to uncoil and process within our bodies. So a gluten-free approach is often the answer for many folks. With that said, what is a gluten-containing grain? An easy mnemonic that when I was studying this stuff, I thought, I need to figure out an easy way to convey to people what is a gluten-containing grain. And I thought, well, brow, like your eyebrow. You have B as in barley is a gluten-containing grain. R is in rye is a gluten-containing grain. Oats. Oats are grown in their nature and biology is a non-gluten grain. However, guess what? They are processed with other gluten-containing grains, and if you're very sensitive to gluten and must avoid it, you would also need to consider your source for the oats. I do have up here for later afterwards, you can help yourself. Bob's Red Mill actually is certified gluten-free oats because they process their oats on dedicated equipment. They do other really good, fantastic stuff, but I just want to throw that out there. And then lastly, the major gluten offender in American diets is wheat. So with that said, those are your gluten stuff. Most other stuff, there's a few other esoteric foods out there, but those are the primary gluten offenders. And so what do you make your cake out of? Well, let's take a look here. What do we got going on? I say 3 to 4 cups of flour in your recipe here. You can choose those dedicated gluten-free oats, or you can take rice. I often will use a brown rice flour, which I have here today. This is, my gluten-free stuff is here. Or, you know what? If you have a fantastic, phenomenal blender such as I do, which is a Blendtec, I also want to go forth and say I do have favorites, although I'm not sponsored by any one particular company or manufacturer. I've got to speak very highly on this piece of equipment, and if you don't have one, or if you're in the market of looking for a blender, you can see me afterwards and I can tell you about the joys. This is a workhorse of a piece of equipment, and I could not put forth the weekly dinners I do, or even in my personal life, without having this piece of equipment. This is a Blendtec. You just push a button. I enjoy it because of ease of a cleaning panel. You just wipe. It's a flat panel. It's a workhorse. Other models, such as a Vitamix, has a tamper, which I find just slows me down. And also, just of a curious note, Vitamix tried infringing upon the design of the Blendtec, which, you know, hey, this is a good piece of equipment. So if they're trying to copy off Blendtec's design, you might want to just go to the source. So there you have it, Blendtec. So back on point. Pardon?
There are other opinions.
There are there's.
The RAM is good.
Yes, but allow me just to finish this. The point I was making, though, is Vitamix infringed upon Blendtec's design. But action was taken, and now it's been remedied. So going forward, we have oat, rice. You can just put your brown rice in here, and it will grind it up, right? It doesn't need to be powder fine for these cakes. You can just put it in there, and it'll grind it up to your desired texture if you don't have any already in your cupboard. Potato starch is another one. Corn is good. Corn will yield, and you want to blend it. Corn will yield slightly and delightfully, as I did last week in my gluten-free cake, a little crispy texture. It's just nice, a little extra flavor there. Coconut, you can take the dehydrated coconut as well. And then there's also hemp seed, or hemp flour. Now, I know we're getting out on the fringes there, but it has a good omega-3 fatty acid profile. It also can kind of color your cake a little greenish, something a little different. It's always out there for you. I wanted to throw that out there too. Chickpeas are available, chickpea flour. Mesquite, that can lend a slightly naturally sweet, smoky flavor, and there's very many health-supporting principles on that. Bean flours, fava bean is one of them. Buckwheat. I want to say buckwheat because some people see that word wheat in there. They, oh no, I can't have buckwheat. Once again, it's a gluten-free grain and it's naturally sweet, so it will help support the sugarless approach to your recipe. So with that said, let's get started cooking. I have here, I've already pre-measured this. You don't need to see the tedium of me measuring things out. So what I've prepared here for our recipe on the gluten-free cake is actually a brown rice flour and tapioca starch as well. Sometimes it's actually from the cassava root, but here in America you often will find it in a pearlized manufactured process. If you come across the pearls and you can't find the flour, you can always put the dried tapioca pearls in your blender, blend it up, and there you go, back to flour again. So it's easy, it gives it a nice texture to the cake as well. And a little bit of potato starch. So with that said, I've already pre-measured it. I say here in our recipe sheet, 3 to 4 cups. Now, this will yield, I have about 90 little mini cakes. So this recipe will yield about 90 of those little mini cupcakes, little ones, or one half of a sheet pan, depending on what you like. So I usually tend to use about closer to 4 cups because I'm cooking for a large group. But as I say, this is an intuitive approach to baking your cake, and you'll just want to be, hey, if you only need 3 cups, just use it, and I'll walk you along with that process. So with that said, we've already got our flour measured in here, and 2 teaspoons of baking soda. Typically, that's something that's just an all-around product we have in our kitchens or in our homes because it's a natural cleaning product, abrasive, light abrasive. It's good for kitchen cleaning or even for your teeth. You can kind of make them sparkle a little bit once or twice a year. Or, of course, here in our baking. So I've pre-measured this as 2 teaspoons. That's about the only hardcore measuring, aside from the salt, that you'll really have to do with these cakes. And so we had the baking soda and then salt. I'll just quickly talk about salt. You need salt in a cake, but you don't need a lot. You need it for the chemical response. This here I'm using is a black cypress sea salt. I use all kinds of salts, and I encourage you to do the same. I also enjoy using a lavender-infused sea salt for my cakes. I encourage you after this class, if you've always been drawn to a particular herb or flour, try incorporating that into a cake or maybe a tea base. But here I'm just going to put in some black sea salt because the color is going to be dark anyway, as a carob powder is already dark. So I'm just going to add that here to our cake, and that's just a measured teaspoon there. And then what do we have coming up next? Apple cider vinegar. This is crucial to use apple cider vinegar in a gluten-free cake, because many vinegars that are on your store shelf are not necessarily gluten-free. For example, a common product is Heinz vinegar, right? You'll see it, but it's 50-something different types or several different types of grains. Some of those grains may contain gluten. So if you've got to be rigid and strict on your gluten-free path, don't even go there with that. Just go for a nice, natural apple cider vinegar, which I have here. And Bragg's is a good brand to use. It has what they refer to in vinegar, the mother in it, so you can actually propagate that vinegar as well. So I've already measured that. This is going to, well, actually I'm going to hold off on adding that at this moment because I want to make certain we get our wet stuff together here. Just because I'm talking, there's a bit of a time delay. I want to also now go, as my directions say, add any chopped goodies to the batter, which in this case, I'm not really having chopped goodies, but I do have my carob. I said, hey, add some carob here. Now, I don't give you any measurements for how much carob. How many, with a show of hands, how many are you familiar with carob powder? About half of you. Well, for those of you who are not familiar with it, it's a lot of folks will use it as a chocolate substitute. But the awesome thing about this is carob is naturally caffeine-free and high in micronutrients. And thirdly, and most importantly for this demonstration, it has a natural sweet taste, whereas cocoa powder, has a bitter quality to it. So if we're going this route of trying to avoid all the other stuff we don't want, carob is a good, tasty choice. So when I say add some carob powder, it's really up to your natural choice. I think this is essentially a handful, or maybe a half cup, 2/3 of a cup. One thing you can kind of know when you're baking your cakes intuitively is you add it to your flour, add some to it, and if it's appropriately colored enough or dark enough with the carob, then you have sufficient amount. Just play with it, have fun with it. It's not a time to get uptight. I have books on how to cook cake and blah, 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 and it's this big production, this big science. This is not the type of cake I'm putting forward here for you today. This is just a simple home style, get it to you with freshness and goodness, and that's what I think is important. So I'm adding carob to here, and now to blend, if we go back up over here to our overview, since I have my dry ingredients already measured in a bowl, and speaking of bowls, if you're limited on space, if you're just starting out, what to get, what do I get? You want looks, you want functionality. If you're limited and can only get a few pieces, I encourage you all to get a large bowl. Just whatever large bowl suits your needs. Larger is better because you're going to be mixing and stuff's going to fly up in the air and you never know what you want to put. You can always put more, but you can't. Well, how does it go? If you have a small bowl, you don't want to be limited to stirring and mixing it, but your large bowls are really the workhorse of the kitchen. So just get a large bowl. If you can see this, you see here I'm stirring it up a little bit. I'm not too concerned about it because it looks pretty good already. And so what if there's a couple little artistic swirls in the batter, some a little whiter, some a little darker. It'll look lovely and then you'll look good. Okay, so with that said, I've blended up my dry ingredients. And now what about blending wet ingredients? What about this? What am I talking about there? So I say wet ingredients, and really what I mean to say is our stuff that's going to go into the blender. So going back to our cake number 2 recipe, at the bottom I say blend approximately 2 cup fruit and 2/3 cup nut or seed butter and liquid to make approximately 3 cups. So with that said, what I've done today for the carob mint cakes is I have some good stuff here. I have a little bit of raw almond butter, some dates, which are very naturally sweet, and also some coconut butter. Not coconut oil. The coconut butter, it has the coconut fiber included in it. And it'll make for a nice moist cake. So I've just kind of measured that out at home to about 1.5 cups, I believe. We can always put it in here and then do a rough estimate of what it's looking like. Well, it's kind of hard to tell. Also want to just, because this is for your benefit, I will also add apples because number 1, it's seasonal. It's a seasonal fruit that's very bountiful at this time of the year, and they're very health supporting, naturally sweet, high in fiber. I just rough chopped these up this morning, added a little bit of fresh lemon juice to prevent browning. I'll just add a couple in there because it'll help the cake and the way it tastes. So there you have it. Now we need to add a little bit of liquid. I said nut or nut butter. You could use your own nut milk. If you have a reliance on using the nut butter, you'll just maybe want to use some water to add to it to make it a little bit of what I refer to as a slurry approach. Or if you want it extra rich, you can use some of this. This is a Almond Dream, unsweetened, just a conventional milk approach. But since this has the coconut butter and the dates in it, I think we'll be fine right now with just adding some water. I'm just going to measure it out, eyeball it out, turn it on, so brace your ears, and see what we get. It's probably going to be too thick, might have to go a little bit thinner, but I'm going to turn this on now and blend it out. I know I turned it on. Oh, the most important piece. The plug-in. So, pardon me. No, we're getting there. Let's see here. Do any of you have any questions while I'm getting this to work? Yes.
So this cake, since it doesn't have eggs, does the tapioca give it some?
It can.
What takes the place of the eggs?
Well, the eggs, the fluffiness is actually the chemical response from the baking powder or baking soda and the salt. That's really what helps create the leavening action. Yes.
And so
Sorry.
it really doesn't need the eggs.
No. Well, you'll taste it. You decide.
Have you ever made wacky cake?
I'm sorry. What was the question?
Wacky cake is a recipe, traditional American recipe for a fluffy cake that has no eggs.
I've never made it by that name, but some people might call my cakes wacky. So there you have it. Let me turn this on. Yeah, it's struggling a little bit. Well, I really am making it go through its paces. So I'm just going to put the top off. Did I hear a dog or was that what was that? Okay. So I'm just going to put this back. Let's give it a little whirl. And these silicone spatulas are really nice to have in the kitchen too. I like my wooden spoons, but silicone spatulas are helpful. All right, That's good enough. It's blended. That's really all I want from this cake. It's just for it to be blended. So with that said, we have a measured, this is a little bit more, you know, they say a pint, a pound the world around. So a pint, 16 ounces, a pound, 16 ounces, traditionally more or less. And then a cup is 8 ounces. So what you want to, I have a little bit more than that, but I'm just going to start adding it to the cake, and then we'll just test and see where it takes us as far as moisture is concerned. And then this is it. So even though I'm talking and I'm taking up time here, you can see this process is probably pretty easy to go in your own kitchen and just, you know, it's pretty hassle-free. You don't have to bring out the batters or the beaters. Like, how many of you have those big kitchen mixers and stand mixers that sit on your counter, and you probably don't use them as much as you envisioned you would use them, but this is something you can just use and put it together. As you might be able to see, it's a little more than thick. So I'm going to add some more water to this blender. It'll all work out. You'll see. And then, yes?
You use the almond butter, date, and coconut butter.
Yes.
Are any of those essential for this, or could I leave one or the other out if I wanted to?
You can leave them all out and choose your fruit of your choice. As if we go up here under ingredient suggestions, when I say seasonal fruit, apple, pear, grape, pineapple, or your favorite, that's what I mean. If I'm using apples and dates because those are available at this season, but if you would like to avoid those, do you have any suggestions on what you'd like to use?
No, I love the apples in the fall. It just, if I left out the coconut butter, would it still come out?
It would. You just want to make up for it in volume, perhaps, with one other item. It just depends. It will always come out. And if it doesn't, then you can just dunk it in syrup and eat it and enjoy it that way. But
We need something for moisture.
well, the moisture actually is coming from the fruit itself. So if he's using fruit, you'll be surprised. Also, dried fruit. I'll have that. We'll speak more about that in the second recipe. Seasonal vegetables, if you're trying to cut back on some of the glycemic load of some of the fruits, you know, a few weeks ago there was a bumper crop in my area of cucumbers. I actually made a cake with cucumbers. It was lovely. I didn't disclose necessarily at the time it was a cucumber cake. I know everyone would love to have that, not. So I just put it in there. So just be careful about that. And flavorings, we got our carrot powder in here. So let's go back. I'm going to turn this on. Okay, that's very good. So I think this will do us up good here. I'm just going to put it all in. And then I also want to add, since this is a carob mint cake, I have some peppermint extract. You know, a little bit goes a long way. So if you feel safe about it, you might want to measure 1/4 teaspoon, perhaps a 1/2 teaspoon. But this is an opportunity for us to use our senses. So just, you know, give it a sniff test, see what's going on there. And since it's a vegan cake and it's risk-free, if you can always taste it as you go along. So you can see, oh, is this cake sweet enough? Do I have enough of the flavors that I'm trying to incorporate into here? So I think we got enough moisture. And the bottom line is, I don't know, it's been ages for me since I've actually made a cake from a box, which I have here. And not to denigrate this particular manufacturer, but the reasons are, this is a gluten-free chocolate cake. And why we'd want to avoid these cakes. Anyone with a show of hands, want to indicate who thinks, who thinks the first ingredient is?
Sure.
It is! It's shocking! Starch, and then more starch, white rice flour. Here we're using brown rice. Cocoa powder, we're using carob. You got some sweet rice, some baking powder. Why are they putting baking powder? You know, you want to avoid that stuff. It's often containing aluminum. We don't need aluminum in our diet. That's not one of the RDA food groups. No, that stuff will put you in an early grave. At least your brain will. And you want to avoid that. Did anyone else have any additional? Did you have a question? Did I see you? No. Okay, it's all right. So here, see, it's looking lovely now. It's looking like a nice cake. It's coming together. Now here's a little trickier part of cake baking. It's like, well, how do I know I have enough of this? Well, if you can easily stir it, this is getting a little thick. If you can easily stir it, though, you're doing good. You have a nice smooth texture, and I don't want to forget to put in the quality that's going to help leaven the cake, the apple cider vinegar. So I'm just going to add that, dump it in there, and then I think we're ready to put it in almost ready to put it in the oven. So you see here, this is your cake. Now it's at this point, if you'd like to add any little chopped fruit bits, nut bits. For this particular group, I wanted to avoid using that, especially since it's a gluten-free cake. And I actually brought some fantastic new spatulas, but they're a little bit flexible and not as stiff as I want, so I'm trying to get to that bottom of the bowl. But I think we're ready to go with that. So there's your cake. And for this purpose, I'm just using a disposable pan. But just as extra insurance in your cake preparation, you may want to just put a little bit of something in there so it doesn't stick. Actually, I've just taken a little bit of the coconut butter that I was speaking of earlier. I've just placed it on this disposable cloth. I'm just going to lightly put that in my pan so when it's baked, it comes out easily and there's no sticking. And since this is a lightweight pan, it's been more prone to goofing up your stuff. So I just want that to turn out well for you. So there it's prepared. And then we're going to just put this into the container here. And it should look something like that. It could be a little thinner, and it could be a little thicker. Actually, when we bring out the samples, I'll talk more about that, about what kind of texture do you want. But this size cake pan, if you prepare your cakes in a size of cake like this, you can cut them up. You can wrap them, and you can freeze them, and then they will be available for you when you need them. And you won't have to go through a panic or crisis mode and say, oh, I got to have something sweet, and then make a choice that perhaps does not support your overall well-being. So thank you, Arlen. So there you have it. And you just want to kind of smoosh it around. I like smooshing. And there you have the cake part. But these cakes are also without frosting or without icing on cake. And a lot of people say, oh, I love the frosting. This is a happy compromise I developed. I know there's something out there called the internet, and I use it a lot. But actually for this whole approach, it's just like, no, I'm just going to go with my gut on this. I'm just going to do what I think needs to be done in the cake world. So I'm not going to say this is new. I'm just going to say I don't research this stuff out. It's just a creative process for me. So I create what I refer to under my ingredient suggestions, a cake toppers. And actually what I've done for this particular cake topper is I've just using a food processor, I've taken some of that carob powder for flavor. I'm just checking my notes here to ensure I give you a proper overview of what's in here. I've also put some of that coconut butter, just a handful. It's just all intuitive. But you know what happens, at least in my home? I will have oftentimes little food bars languishing in the cupboard. Oh, there's just one or two or parts of cereal. All these little bits just kind of accumulate. You don't want to throw them out, but they never get eaten either. So what are you going to do with them? So you want to put them in. You want to put them in this little topping on your cake, and it'll make it delicious. Now, what I actually have in here is a fantastic food product. Actually, it's from Lydia's Loving Foods. They're actually located in Petaluma, and she offers a wonderful, delightful assortment of good, healing raw foods, living foods, and gluten-free foods. This is actually one of her products in here. It's a sprouted cereal. I think it's her cinnamon one. That's gluten-free. Thank you, Arlen. That's certified gluten-free. So I had some of this, and it has some almonds in there, a little bit of sunflower. So I just put that in my food processor, not really using measurements, but just knew I had a good amount. Now, if you do over make and any of this stuff, you can just freeze it, put it in a bag or whatever container you'd like, and just freeze it for the next time you make a cake. So I'm just going to sprinkle this on top. And then if you're using fresh fruit, as we'll discuss later, you'll just want to make certain that you have a chance to really put it into the batter so it doesn't fall off the cake when if you could just rinse that, thank you. So I've already sanitized my hands earlier, and what I'm just going to do is using my hands, because that'll get bogged down on the spatula if I don't, is just spread this out bit by bit. And when it bakes, you'll have definitely the cake batter below, and then you'll have this luscious, crunchy topping, because there's actually sprouted quinoa in this cereal. So to give it a little bit of texture difference and flavor, and of course more chopped apple in there, because what's going to happen is when you use fresh fruit or these dried fruits and reconstitute them, they're a nice little burst of sweetness in your mouth. So there you have it. A nice mud cake as it looks. But now Arlen's going to take this cake, maybe he won't, thank you. And then okay, fantastic. And just be careful because it's like slippy slidey. And that's just going to go in a preheated oven for about 30, 35 minutes. You know, when it starts to smell done, that's when you need to go look in your oven. Because if you don't look in your oven then, in about a few more minutes, you'll be smelling burned food. And you don't want that. You don't want the smoke alarms ringing and railing. So there you have it. That is our carrot mint cake. And at this time, I think they're going to pass out samples. So you just be, you know, they're a little bit ugly duckling. There you go, good timing. So, you know, these cakes, I made them in a little cupcake mold. I just did not put them in the particular mold. I just spread them on a cookie sheet. And so they might be a little bit ugly ducklings as far as formation of the cake is concerned. But hopefully you'll find them enjoyable. And as I said, you know, I make these cakes typically on Wednesday, and at the dinner then they're completely devoured and taken. So I've never actually made a cake and actually had it more than a day. So these have been kept fresh, hopefully, just in the zippered container. I think they're bringing out the cakes. I have them all. I'm reluctant to go forward until you get a taste of that. Jana, are they bringing out the little samples of the carrot mint cakes? Oh, fantastic. Yes, the dark browns. Yes, the carrot mint. And we have plenty of samples for everyone. Yes, do you have a question?
Yeah, can you remind me, would you put what kind of flavored oil, essence of oil did you add?
I actually used a peppermint oil, pure peppermint extract. And you know, mints are by nature almost weed-like in quality. If you can grow your own mint, use it. And like I said earlier in the show, I think lavender is an awesome thing to grow. And you can harvest that in your own home too and put it in your cake. I love the flavor of lavender. Another thing is basil. Basil goes very well with a lot of summer fruits. Peach and basil, I made a cake like that, similar to that. So those flavors. So I really encourage you to explore the health-supporting principles of different herbs that are out there and incorporate them into a cake that is health-supporting for you. So there you have. Did anyone else have any additional questions? Yes?
I have an electric skillet that has oil in it, so the pan and the sides are the same temperature. Can that be baked in that kind of a pan? You know?
I'm certain it can, because I know you can bake cakes, as I bake a lot of my food in crock pots. So does it heat up to 325?
Yeah, it's just like, yeah, it goes up to 400 something, but the sides are the same temperature at the bottom.
But the sides are the same temperature.
It's all oil filled, so it's consistent.
Yeah, it should bake really nicely in that environment. Although I don't have personal experience with that, but it makes sense. They put it there for uniform baking, right? So I think you should have a lovely product if it's uniform in heating. And then you had a question?
Did you make your own coconut butter?
No, I did not. This is from Maranatha. They have a nice organic coconut butter. If you Maranatha. Anyone else? Yes.
How easy is it to clean your Blendtec?
Oh, you know how easy it is? It's so easy. It's my favorite appliance, and I have many appliances. You know, you just put a little water in there, a squirt of dish soap, you know, put it on blend, and you got a clean container. And as I say, if you come up here, you can see it's all flat face. There's no of those buttons or dials to get all gunked up with bad stuff you don't want in your kitchen. So those of you who might be trying the carrot mint cake, it might be a little dry, But that's why I really want to encourage you to try the freshly baked cake that's coming out this afternoon, because you'll get an opportunity to have a cake that has more, it's just a denser, better mouthfeel than those little bits. Because indeed, those are just little bites. Yes?
Would you go over the topping you put on the cake?
Absolutely. I simply took a bit of carob powder, a bit of coconut butter, and of course, the ubiquitous apple, because I enjoy using apples. I have an apple tree in my yard, so I use a lot of those apples. And then lastly, for this particular one, as I encourage you to do, any sort of languishing topping, I had the Lydia sprouted cereal in my cupboard, so I used some of hers. So with that, if no one else has any additional questions, I'm going to go forward with the next topping. So I would encourage you to give any feedback. If you have any questions upon tasting the cake, how is that? Is that responding? Do you guys need something probably to drink? It was good. But it could be better if you make it yourself, because you can customize it. Just keep in mind, I'm trying to give an approach that's really minimizing the oils and the fats, as well as the sugar. So what's next? We actually have an awesome conventional cake. What have I titled it? For me personally, I've titled it a cinnamon apple streusel cake. So what do we start with again? We got to start with our flours. This is a stone ground whole wheat. I'm not talking that white fluffy stuff. I'm talking the stone ground stuff, which is more health supporting. If you've ever had an opportunity to go to a mill, I encourage you to do so, because the stuff that they grind there is really good. And then you also have some oats here. Oats are good for texture, flavor, fiber. Just want to measure that up. I have about 4 cups here. I'm just going to dump these here in the bowl. We got our 4 cups of flour measured. And then what else do we have? We have a little bit of, once again, we're going to have a bit of cinnamon. Since this is my apple cinnamon streusel cake, I'm going to put a bit of this dried cinnamon in our dry mix, adding that. And then you also have baking soda once again. So I've already measured it out, 2 teaspoons. And then on top of that, our sea salt. I think it's our cypress sea salt, black. Once again, it'll work well with this recipe. So there you have it. There's our dry stuff. Once again, we just want to do a quick stir on it just to measure it out, blend it up. There you go. Make everyone happy. And then for our wet mix, once again, we just want to go back to that. How much wet mix do I want to add? About, I think I say here, I've already taken care of my baking soda, my salt, my vinegar, which I have right here, which since I'm talking, I'm going to just hold off on that for just a moment. And then, our fruit. So right here I have more of these apples. I want to use these apples up. So I'm going to add this. I know I've used this for my gluten-free portion, but since there isn't a flavor confusion here, I'm just going to add it to the blender. Add some apples. And then I've also pre-measured some peanut butter here. It's a little chunky peanut butter, but now it's going to be a smooth peanut butter because it's going in the blender. And this just helps keep the moisture in the cake. So there you have it. And if you didn't have peanut butter, you might just have some peanuts you could throw in there with some added liquid. Also, what I forgot to do is, since this is a cinnamon apple streusel cake, I have added to this cake inside some raisins. These are actually organic Himalayan golden raisins. Just a word of note about raisins. You know, probably our ancestors ate raisins, and those before them ate raisins. For many generations, you know, we've done well on raisins. I know there are many exotic berries nowadays out there, but this is a good powerhouse health-supporting food. One thing I neglected to do at the beginning of our demonstration is actually add a little bit of liquid, which you will want to do as well, to your dried fruit to plump it up. I give this as a suggestion under the ingredient suggestion package, our square right up here. I think it says dried fruit plump in water with juice or milk. Just, you want to really give that stuff some moisture. It doesn't take long, but you just want to give it a little bit of moisture, so I'll get that started at least. So there you have it. There's an apple, some nut, and then I'm just going to add some of this because this is what I actually happen to have this morning. And I think we got enough just to get it started. Let's see what we can do. Okay, I want to be easy on our hearing today. So as you see, that just blended up easily, nicely. And then I'm going to go forward and just add this to my dry batter. I'm also going to add the apple cider vinegar before I forget. Put that in there. Of course, it's not as critical to use the apple cider vinegar with a conventional cake. You can use any kind of vinegar you might happen to have in your pantry. You might happen to have a blueberry balsamic vinegar or an apple cider balsamic. Those are really rich flavors which will do well by your cake. And you see here it's just mixing up. Here we go. And I can smell the peanut butter. As the peanuts cook, the flavor dissipates a bit, which you may enjoy or not desire. If you don't desire the strong flavor of peanuts, you can always use almonds. Cashews are a very neutral and creamy product. So as you see here, this is coming together a little bit looser than a cookie batter, almost like a cookie batter. If you wanted a more velvety texture, you would add more liquid. But since I have the whole oats and the streusel topping, I think that'll go well with this flavor profile type of cake. Add a little bit more there, and then before it gets too far from me, I just want to go ahead, go through the same routine. I'm going to oil this pan unless did I actually toss my little coconut swabbed towel? Well, maybe I did. So I'll have to live dangerously and put the cake in the batter there. But before I do that, I'm going to put in some of our quick seasoned raisins. It's just, a handful in there. And you just do to your eye, do to what you feel comfortable with. Because once again, these are intuitive cakes. You're going to be able to make them and yourself, and that's pleasing for you and your family. So that extra moisture is actually beneficial. And I think we've just about stirred that, and it's come together nicely. So I have sufficient amount of apples, liquid, it's all ready. So with that said, I'll put it into our pan. So does anyone think they could actually or would actually do this at home after seeing these cakes, how easy it is? I think it's easier than a box cake, that's for sure. You know, you got to read the directions, and then you need all those other ingredients you may not even want. So there you have it. So there's your batter in here. Thank you. And you can also take the mixer and finish with that. And then here I have a topping. Once again, this is my streusel topping. So what went into this? A bit of cinnamon, a lot of apple, and some more of Lydia's cereal. I like the little crunchy bit. I think it'll go well. So if you want to go get the streusel cakes, those would be a good time to hand those out. So I'm just going to flatten this out a little bit.
Did you food process that?
Yes, thank you for bringing that to my attention. I did just kind of quick chop this up just to what I was looking for in the food processor. I didn't feel it was necessary to blend those here in front of you because, well, most people have a food processor. If you don't have a food processor, you can trial and error, by using your blender at home or just hand chopping it. So this kind of really spreads out easily and quickly here. And there you have it. That's it. That's your cake. Done. Now, one thing I didn't mention is also what about measuring devices? And this is actually just, your all-purpose 4-cup measuring device. It's very versatile, and it's a workhorse in your kitchen. If you don't have one, you might want to get one. So with that said, I think this concludes the cooking demonstration for today. I do have those coupons available for you to come and pick up. And please visit, stop by the courtyard table if you have any questions and would like additional fresh samples of the cake. Please do so. And thank you very much. Oh, yes. Thank you.
How long, if I don't finish them off so fast, how long can I keep the cake?
Well, I don't really have experience with it because when I typically prepare the cakes, they're gone within a few hours of me preparing them. But probably a week under good conditions, meaning you've put them in your in a sealed container. You've also maybe kept them under refrigeration. But ideally, if you want to just cut them up when the cake comes out of the oven and then wrap it up and put it in the freezer, then you can take them out in the serving sizes as needed. Then you don't have to stress about how long will it last. It's just there for you, and you can enjoy it that way.
How big are the containers that you put the cake in?
Well, as I said, I usually use something like this. Mine at home is a little bigger, and if you want to put this in the oven, that would be fantastic.
For you or anything.
Thank you. Or you can use these little mini cupcakes or a full cupcake. It just depends what suits you. If you have one of those bundt cake pans, those circular ones, that makes a lovely cake as well. So you're tasting the streusel cake now, but as I say, it probably doesn't do it justice as a nice traditional square. I just wanted to get something to you so you could get an idea of what kind of cake you're dealing with here. Did anyone else? Thank you. Did I answer your question? Did anyone else have any additional questions? Well, if that's not, then I hope to see you out there at the table and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you. Thank you.